Okay, good. So the exercise we're going to be doing today has to do with how to import and export data. Okay, so the logic here is the following. So we've already got our database structured and constructed and accessed. Um, and we've created forms to be able to input data into the database, right? But these forms that we're going to be creating or queries or whatever are mostly to give maintenance to the information in the database. But maybe when we're creating the database, we've already got some information that's stored elsewhere. Okay, so like we mentioned at the beginning of the course, there might be information or data that's stored in Excel worksheets, for example. Okay, and so and these might not be just two, three, or four records. There might be 100 or hundreds of records, or thousands of records. In that case, inputting each of these one by one into the database, it's not going to be practical. So it might be useful to be able to import data, to import a bunch of data into the database. And on the other hand, once we've got data already in the database, we might want to export that into Excel, for example, or Word or somewhere else to work on it in another template. So or in another software. So that's what we're going to see today. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And I'm going to open Access. And I'm going to open the SocialCorp example. This is the example we've been working on up to this point. And so I'm going to open the employee table. Right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 records here. And so let's imagine that I got records that I want to import into the employee table. Okay. These records might be in different sources, but right now, the example I'm going to provide, these are going to be in an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so we are going to open an Excel worksheet. I'm going to show you this in a second. And so I've got an Excel worksheet that's called Table Employee. Notice this. This Excel worksheet in particular, I've formatted it to have the same fields that the table has. And I've actually used the same names. This is important to have congruency. So this information of the employee table is replicated here in Excel. Okay, and we've got 3 records here. These 3 records are not included in our employee information in our database. And I'd like to add them. I can use a form to do that, but I want to add all of them in one operation, okay, in one swipe. And so what we do, we're going to go here to external data. And here in the external data section, we're going to have a series of tools that we can use to import and export data. So I'm going to go over here to new data source. And I'm going to say that the new data source is from a file. Notice that we can have many types of data sources. So from file, for example, I can import the arrow here that's going inside means import when the arrow goes inside. So I can import from Excel, from HTML, from an XML, or even a text file. I can import from a database. I can import information from another Access database, an SQL server, etc., from certain online services, or from other sources. Okay. Right now, I'm going to do it from a file, and it's going to be an Excel file. Okay. I am in a series of windows are going to open. The first one is going to be this one that is going to indicate, first off, where am I going to get the information from? So I'm going to browse here, and I'm going to locate that file that I showed you, that Excel file that I showed you. And here is the Excel file. It's right here. It's called Table Employee. Okay, I'm going to select that one. That's going to be the data source. Now, there's a few ways to do this. Okay, one is that we can import the source data into a new table in the current database. So that's another thing. Remember that we created tables, right? We created tables with attributes, etc. We can actually create tables from external data. So right now I'm going to do that just to see what happens. It says import the source data into a new table in the current database. I'm going to click OK. It's going to show me the information that's located in the Excel file that I'm providing. So this is the information. It's got this check mark to indicate if the first row are the headers. In this case, the first row does contain the headers. I'm going to click next. And it's asking me if I want to include all of the fields or some of the fields. Okay. We can actually also not import a field. We can change the data type if we want. So for example, right now this number is double. We could change it to be a simple integer or currency or whatever. So we can change information here. Right now for this example, because remember that our tables need to have primary keys, we can let Access add the primary key. Basically, notice what's going to happen there. If I do this, it's going to add a column with a consecutive number. Or I can choose what the primary key is going to be. In this case, it could be Social Security number. Or it could have no primary key, and I could include it afterwards. I'm going to leave the no primary key checked right now. Next, how is the table going to be called? I'm going to call this one table, just to differentiate it, table employee import. And it says, I would like the wizard to analyze my table after importing the data. We can check that one or not. And I'm going to click finish. Okay. And this is just asking me if I want to save these steps. So the next time we do it, it's going to be exactly the same. I suggest not checking this mark because there might be different situations each time we do it. And what happens now, notice that now I have a new table here that's called table employee import. That's got the data that's got the data from the Excel. Okay. Now this is useful because we could actually create the database tables from tables that we have external, that we have defined in Excel or any other document, as we showed there. Now, another way of doing this is that right now we created a new table, but we could actually add the information, or rather import the information from that Excel table onto an existing table and add those records. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go again here to new data source from File, Excel. Again, I'm going to select the same file. Before I do that, notice that in this exercise that I did, I haven't modified the original employee table. Okay, it's the same. I just added a new table here that's called table employee import that I can use or not if I want. I'm going to go again to new data source, Excel. I'm going to select the same employee table that I had. But instead of selecting the option that says import the source data into a new table, I am going to select the second one that says append a copy of the records to a table. What does that mean? That means that it's going to take the records in the Excel spreadsheet that I showed you, and it's going to add them to a table that I define. So in this case, I can select the table. I'm going to add them to the employee table. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. It's showing me the records. Okay, by default, it's noticing that the first row is the header. It's just confirming to what table it's going to do the importing. And then we click finish. Again, it's also going to ask us if we want to save these steps. We're not going to click that and close. Now notice what happens when I open the employee table. Now I've got the 3 new records. Now I've got the 3 new records that were in the original table. They've automatically been added, okay? So this is practical because it's allowing me to move data around, okay? Now, this is, and again, we can move data from many sources, okay? Right now I'm doing the Excel example because it's one of the most practical. But also I can export data. Exporting data is useful because I'm going to give you an example. Access is a database management software that has its advantages, but it's also limited. I think we mentioned this when we were talking about reports and in the YouTube video regarding reports. Access has Access has a tool to make reports, but it's not necessarily the most powerful tool. So maybe this information that I have here, I want to export it to an Excel worksheet or a PowerPoint presentation or a text file, and I want to do the reports elsewhere. I want to do the reports in another software. So that might be a reason to do it. And notice that here we've got a section as to how we want to do our exporting of data. Okay, so I'm going to select that I want to do an export. Notice that the arrow is now going to the application. I want to do an export to Excel. Again, it's going to ask me the file name that I want to use. Okay, I'm going to create a new file name. I'm not table employee. I'm going to use I'm going to call this table employee 2. The format, notice that it can be an Excel worksheet, a binary, the same options that you get when you're working with Excel. And here are some options. So export data with formatting and layout. That means that the same way I'm seeing the data in Access, in the table, that's the way it's going to be exported. I'm going to select that one. And it's telling me to open, if I want to open the destination file after the export operation is complete, just so I can see it, I'm going to select that one also. Okay. I'm going to, by the way, we could have previously, to have done this, we could select some records if we wanted to. Right now we're selecting everything. I'm going to click OK. And this was done very quickly, by the way. It's opened a new Excel worksheet called Table Employee, and it's provided me all of the data here. Okay. So this is the export of, I'm going to click close. This is the export of the employee table. And I can do an export of any of the tables I want with the information that's recorded there. And notice that now all of the information, I have it here in Excel, and I can manipulate it as I wish. Okay. I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. And there's other ways. I could export this to a text file. I'm going to do this with the dependent table, just so you see. I'm going to call this file table.txt. I'm going to select formatting and date and layout, and I'm going to also ask for to see it when the operation is complete. This is going to be a text file, so it might be a bit jumbled. What type of encoding do we want? I'm going to select Windows, and this is what it gives me. Okay, it provided me a text format of the table. We could also export it as a PDF. Okay. I'm going to select another table. I'm going to select the departments table. And I'm going to export that as a PDF. Okay. And the department table is going to be exported as this. So I could just generate a PDF and send it to somebody. for example. We can do the same for the reports, by the way. So for example, remember that we had these reports. So let's say that I want to export this report as a PDF. So just to give you an example, I could generate automatically a report, okay, with the information if I wanted to. I could export any of this. We can actually send it via email if we want. So for example, I could export this report here in PDF format, and it's going to open my, it should open my email, okay? And I can send it directly. So I can generate a report and send it to myself, for example. And I can just send the here, okay? And I can send this to myself. It's going to open the default. It's going to open the default program that we have for email. Okay. I can export it to another Access database, or I can have more options. I can export it to Word, to an HTML document, so I can do many options to do exporting. Okay. So this is useful to be able to bring data into our database if we have it from external sources, so we don't have to fill everything in. And it's also useful to be able to create data that we can automatically send out to another application or to be processed by another application. So those are some useful things. Okay, I'm going to close this up here. I'm going to go back here to the Excel, okay, to the Adobe. And that's kind of the summary of the